So I'm Kneko Burney Miller. I am the host for our Growing Happily series. I'm also the CEO of Change 3. And some of you may have met me from my video on my bio. I've been doing this, providing advisory, guidance, leadership coaching for about 3 decades. I know you couldn't believe that, but I am. I've been around for a lot longer than my visuals suggest. And this series of events is my brainchild. We do a lot with very large companies, big brands like IBM and big tech companies. And over the years, we've had the honor and the pleasure of working with a growing number of small businesses. And so this series is really designed to enable owners, professionals, influencers, key professionals in small and mid-sized and growing businesses. There's so many things that most of you are probably aware of, but there's lots of things that we come across as we work with these really huge brands that I've found a way to translate into really practical, useful insight for decision makers in companies like mine that are growing. And we've got goals. And so I really want to share with you everything that I learned. And I'm honored that you guys are joining me, and I hope that you'll share with us as well. I also have some pretty awesome buddies, like the award-winning CEO, Jessica Dixon from Imaginary. And so I'm actually going to have her tell you about her amazing agency, and then we'll kick off our discussion.
Thanks, Kneko. Super happy to be here and to be a part of this conversation. Certainly an exciting time with the election and kind of an uncertain time for a lot of people. So it's going to be an exciting conversation. Imaginary is a marketing agency. Um, you name it, we do it. Social media, strategic design, strategy, SEO, team development, social media engagement, digital strategy, UI, UX, website development. So anyway, we're an award-winning agency. Super, super proud of my team. I've been working with Kneko for, I mean,
5 minutes because she's
yeah,
only 10.
right. I don't want to, I want to be careful. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Kneko and Change 3 and really honored to be a part of the conversation and to be able to interact with all of you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to kick this off because you guys have actually already shared some of your input. So almost 30 of you shared some information about how you market and if you made any changes. And so I don't actually plan on having any slides because, like I said, if you've seen, you've talked, a lot of you have talked to our team and that's how you registered, or you came through social, or you came through an email invitation. And, we say this is an open, nurturing discussion. And so I really am honoring that. But I do have some data I want to share with you guys because it might be interesting. So I'll talk about it and then I'm going to throw it up on the screen. So, many of you shared how you market. And so, how you market today is primarily in two ways: email and inside sales. And I'm going to show you a graph in just a second. And you know what? Those are really great methods. When we look at the folks that are in the room, you guys are in B2B sectors just like mine and like Jessica's. So you're in financial services, business services, technology, software. We have some folks that are in other industries, but mostly they're all B2B. And so honestly, for B2B email, you can't go wrong with email and inside sales. Um, about 1 in 3 of you guys are using paid media, digital media, like paid social, Google search ads, display, that sort of stuff. And you can't go wrong with that either. There are some tips and tricks. So those of you who are doing paid media, the first part of this discussion is going to be so interesting because what you may or may not be noticing it, but ad costs are definitely rising as a result of the $12.3 billion in incremental ad spend, a lot of it on digital media. So that's the first part of this conversation is really going to talk to those first two bits, which is, how can you make sure you still have marketing effectiveness as ad costs are temporarily, it's a very short-term burn, as ad costs are temporarily rising. Are there alternative channels that you could be thinking about adding into your mix during this time? And some of those channels you might want to continue to use beyond it, because for when you're targeting B2B, it's a lot different to start that more complex conversation. And though digital channels like, social media, whether it's LinkedIn or something else, might be a great way to start that conversation, it usually doesn't drive a conversion. And so, you might be like, I don't know, I'll get more out of email, right? So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Then we're going to get a little bit more input from you guys and then have what I hope will be the more interactive part of this discussion where we talk about political topics at work, right? How do you navigate that? Because that's the second part of why we wanted to have start off our series with this particular topic, which might not seem that interesting or really urgently relevant because most of you guys are like, I'm doing email and I got my inside sales, I'm good. But the thing is in an environment where there's an opportunity for, or not an opportunity, a possibility for division as a business, it's really important to hone your skills on how you navigate. How do you navigate through these kind of potentially controversial, potentially risky, potentially difficult discussions? And what are some tips? And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to get a little more input from you guys and then just hopefully have a really nurturing discussion. I've got a very interesting case study as well about our actual small business that was really on a great growth path, and that growth path got cut short because of exactly what we're going to talk about in the second half, which is a political conversation emerged unexpectedly, and that resulted in some cancel culture that they got caught up in. So we'll talk about that later. So with that being said, I'm going to show you your what you guys shared with us about how you market. So forgive me as I navigate through this, and let's see if I can figure out where am I. Okay, so I'm going to share, and I'm going to share this. All right, let's see. Here we go. These are the two questions we asked as people registered, and some, oh, the numbers are changing. Oh my goodness. So not everybody answered this question, but this first graph is how people say they principally go to market, right? How they market their business, including generate leads. Email, look at that. Oh my gosh, so much email. We should add that to our list of topics for this year because email is just getting crazy, you guys, and I would love to talk to you guys about it. Inside sales, same thing. These are really proven tactics. A lot of B2B advertisers and marketers, really solid proven tactics. But guys, they are getting harder, right? It's harder to call people and get them on the phone. It's harder to get them to open your email. It's harder to get your emails delivered. So that's what takes us down to paid social, paid media, SEO, right? These kind of digital media are really important. They really help, especially if you use ID graph solutions like Marketing OS or Sixth Sense or Demand Base or, 5 by 5. There's a bunch. If you're building audiences so that you can align your email audience and your paid media audience, then you get more eyeballs and more brand recognition, and they lift each other. So, so that's where I want to start. The other thing that I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to stop sharing so we can get back to our open discussion, is this. So the second question is, what changes have you made, right? If any? And what it shows you is that almost everybody made a change, right? No one said I didn't make any changes. No one said, oh, I don't need to. No one, very few people said, I'm not sure. Everybody, almost everyone made some sort of a change. So 96% of you guys made a change, and small sample size. So if you back to my background in statistics, right? That's a just under the threshold for a t-test, but it's good anecdotal, to give us an idea that this kind of climate where there are some, you know, potentially unsavory conversations that you may or may not be having, your employees might be tempted to have. People are changing. So, with that being said, what I'm going to do is let's shift and start talking about your marketing mix. So, I already teed it up. I said, hey, if you're doing digital media, it can definitely help you with your core tactics like email and inside sales. You don't even have to spend a lot. But if you are doing digital media, you might notice that your ad costs are rising. They could be rising. Or, which might be what you see more of, is you're not getting the same kind of click through. Your CTRs are dropping potentially. And so I would love to throw this over to Jess because she is really a social media maven. She does loads of social for lots of different kinds of brands. So, Jess, what's your perspective on, what's going to happen over the next few months as we, go up to early November?
Yeah, it's interesting, especially with social media. And so what we're finding lately is that SEO and social media are really starting to collide and combine. So people are going to Google for that initial search. If you see it on a billboard, the radio, you hear about it. But then they also go to Facebook, which is actually the number one consumer platform to see what a company is about. You would think it would be Instagram. That's a platform that really spans across every single demographic, but it's still Facebook, believe it or not. TikTok is a close second, and YouTube because of the video platform. So the strategy these days is really finding a way to make it all work together. What's interesting with this election year and the two kind of prior to this election is it's a state of uncertainty, right? So
Mhm.
right now, what we're finding is when it comes to social media, people are really connecting with what's real, what's
Good
raw.
point. Yeah.
I don't want to see anything that's polished. Back in the day, like kind of the 90s marketing, it was, you wanted to see like really professional pictures and, something that's like idealistically, that's where I want my company to be. That's where I want to be when it was really unrealistic. And I think now we're all in a place where it's like, come on, I don't want to see that. It's not realistic. It's polished. Just give me real. And so that's the trend. That's what people are connecting with, especially with videos, reels. You need to have a really strong strategy with the reels because it comes through the feed more often. The algorithms are picking it up more. Um, but what I'm advising my clients who kind of want to adjust and kind of move and groove with the strategy, and it's like, do we get ahead of the election? Do we wait for the election? What do we do? I'm
Mm-hmm.
advising pause because it's
Good
such an
point.
uncertain time. Let's take a step back and let's look at the overall behaviors and perceptions of people, generally speaking. Through this election, what do they need? What do they need to feel a little more stable? Most people are not going to make big business decisions right now, even though you want them to invest in your company. Unless it's a service that they need every day, they're probably going to pause that big investment until after someone is, the new president-elect is in office and things are starting to settle down a little bit. They want to see what the market is doing. And so I kind of recommend doing the same, that if you're in a place where you can pause on your strategy and you're not in a place where you're losing revenue and you're in crisis and you need to get something going like immediately to save your business, take a step back for a second before you start to dive into your, Q3, Q4 strategy. And
Great
also take a look
point.
at how things are going now. If they need to
Mhm.
be adjusted, maybe some A and B testing, but really taking a step back to really analyze people and the market and how are those colliding together and how can you best work that together.
Such a great perspective. Thank you for sharing that. So I hadn't even thought about pausing. I was thinking about, do you shift? And you know what? Everything you pointed out, I couldn't agree more with, especially Facebook. I did an event earlier this year and we were talking about, is Facebook a place for B2B, right? A lot of folks in the room today are B2B marketers. And one guy was like, seriously, Facebook? And it's like, seriously, Facebook?
Yeah.
right? And actually, I'm working on a test right now, you guys, on X. So I know people like Twitter got dragged through the dirt and the coals, and like big major advertisers are like boycotting or whatever. But the thing is, the yields on X are crazy, and I'm not gonna steal my thunder. It's in October that we're going to do that reveal. But we took $500, we spent it on X, we spent it on Facebook, we spent it on YouTube, we spent it on LinkedIn, and we're going to show you how many impressions, how many clicks, how many leads you get, from each platform. And I'll tell you, the early results are pretty interesting. So, but I agree with you. So before I move on, because I have another question for you, Jess, that's actually moves us to the next point, is I couldn't agree with you more. What you said, I hadn't even thought about pausing, but actually, now that you say that, I was thinking about pausing because I was thinking about pivoting, right? So some places are going to be a little hot, not because what you're doing is hot. Your emails are probably not politically spicy, and your inside sales reps are probably not politically spicy, but your customers are getting bombarded with political messages, fear messages, worry messages. Oh, the future is bleak. The future is this. And even though there are messages about joy and all these other things, they're like, as you said, I couldn't agree more. There's this sense of what's happening next. So that before I move on to the next part, which is, what are there other places you go? Because everybody, we need my money. We need our money, right? You're like, I've been doing my ads, and now if I'm going to pause, then how do I make sure I keep my traffic flowing and no phone ringing and all that?
Yeah.
So where else do we go, right? Before we do that, though, do we have any questions? Does anybody have a story that they want to share, or they want to share their situation on this topic of, your digital media and how so far this kind of political spend and related might be affecting you? Ella, do we have anyone in the chat
Yeah,
right now?
thank you. Yes, thank you, Kneko. So we have a question in the chat right now.
Mhm,
Here's what it says. I'm interested in ads on LinkedIn and maybe
mhm,
Facebook. I
mhm.
heard you need a lot of money to get anything from it. Is that
Oh,
true?
such a good question. And see, girlfriend, we go. I know Jessica's only 22, but I've known her for like 25 years. But you didn't hear that from me. So but yeah, we're both going to be like, no. I have a client, and we spend $250 a month. They're a tiny tech company. The owners have been doing this for like 40 or 50 years. They're both ready to retire, and they're getting ready to sunset the business, but we still drive traffic to their, certain pages. We still get conversions. They spend $250 across multiple platforms, not just LinkedIn. They do Google ads, and they cram all that into a couple $100. So Jess, what do you think? What's your low threshold for, paid social and paid
Yeah,
ads?
I gotta be honest. It's not so much the money, putting money behind it absolutely helps, but it's really more strategy. Hashtags are a really big thing.
Hmm.
I think hashtags kind of got lost in the shuffle because, kids these days will be like hashtag happy. It's like, what does that mean even? But there is a strategy behind hashtags. And if you research it, and they move and they groove with the
Yeah,
trending. And if you include the right hashtags, the algorithms are going to pick you up. They'll pop up in search engines. So, like I said, SEO and social media are starting to come together.
yeah,
So, when people go to Google, and for instance, it's I need to find I don't know, mental health for my kid, right? So
yeah,
they type in mental health for my child. And then they'll go to social media, mental health for my kid, and
yeah,
start just to see kind of what pops up. And
yeah,
if you have the right hashtags, they're going to connect with the search. So it's not just a branded search, which means a company search, right? Brand means I'm typing in the name of your company into Google or to a social media platform, and the company will show up. People are searching in the search engines of Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. You know YouTube, right? How do I
yeah,
fix my car? Right? You type it
yeah,
into YouTube and it pops up.
yeah.
But people are absolutely using this as an SEO strategy. So, kind of going back to your question, as long as you have the right content, the right strategy in your post, it will be picked up by the algorithm. It will be picked up by the trending search pages. And that's how you get the most attention. And then you can boost it. But you can do things organically. You can also have strategic partnerships. So if there's someone, a like-minded business where you can partner and they are very active on social media, they have a really large following, find a way to get in with them, right? Or even an influencer, right? If there's something that someone wants to be involved with your company, always ask yourself from their perspective, what's in it for me? Once you can answer
Hmm.
that question, then you can approach them and say, this is what I can do for you. This is why I think this would be great. But if they have 30,000 followers and they co-post with you, you just got 30,000 visibility for no
Yeah,
money, and you can
yeah.
organically grow your page that way. So there are lots of different things that you can do strategically that don't necessarily require paid media.
Great, great answer. Yep. I couldn't agree more. And same thing, I always do limbo, right? How low can you go? Whether it's who do you start talking to when you introduce yourself to an account, how your paid media spend, it's just how low can you go? So it's always good to do limbo. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's about your message. It's before that, it's about your targeting. Do you have a well-targeted audience? At Change 3, and I'm sure Jess over at Imaginary, we do consulting. We'll meet with you at no cost. If you've got, especially for you, what you've asked for, please grab Ella, or Sandy on my team. She probably will be reaching out. Grab us. Would love to talk to you about it. Basically, it's, you define your strategy, but you really could spend nothing. I had a client spend $50 a month on paid followers just so they could grow the followers on their page. And in 6 months, they went from literally 0 to 10,000. And we worked with them. Now, we spent a bunch of money with them doing other stuff too, but the follower campaign was just hands down a big success. And it was all about what Jess said. We really thought about who they wanted to connect with. We made sure we rotated those, boosted follower ads. We had follower ads in different platforms, and it really built up their audience. So just like what she said, they could really monetize their organic pool. And there was a ton of other stuff that we did. We sent little messages to different people who interacted with their ads and stuff. There's a lot of things you can do. The other thing that I'll say to all of you is I don't know about how y'all people are, but I know for me, it's like I have all these ideas and I get so busy that I don't have a time to do them, right? Now, I'm lucky, and Jess and I are lucky. Like, this is what we do, right? This is our job. We get to do this every day. But for a lot of you guys, you might not be in marketing as a profession, right? You sell tech, or you sell financial services or business services. And so you're like, all this marketing stuff sounds great and I would love to do it, but I have other stuff to do. So that's where you would work with someone like us. And I don't know about her girl rate card, but I'm sure she's awesome. But for us, we work with loads of small companies. And as I mentioned, we have a client that literally spends, like, I don't know, $200 a month. 250, I think, is what the last. It might be 150. No, that's what it is. 150 is their last monthly ad budget. And we love them. We've worked with them for years. So reach out. Ella will grab you guys and set up a time. We could do a lot of this stuff for you for much less than you realize. All right. So infomercial over. Next thing. So Jess, so we said, okay, pause or pivot. So you say pause. I'm with you. I hear where you're going at with this, but I would say pivot, right? Because you still need the phone to ring and you still need to start those relationships. So where do we pivot? Like, so here's some stuff I'll say and I'll see what you got to say. Okay. So for B2B, all right, what I would say is what I'm finding is I'm working with my B2B clients. They're not even paying attention to the, like, my business profile on Google. They don't, and I have to say I'm guilty of it too, right? I don't even know what them fools say, right? And it's like you're not paying attention, but it really can help. Things like Yelp in certain sectors, depending on what kind of service or solution you offer, you might want to pay attention to what's on Yelp, or what is it, Angie's List, or Nextdoor. They're different, kind of referral networks. That are a little more consumery, but there's some business services in there. Like if you offer janitorial services or things like that for a business, then you might want to be in those platforms. There are other platforms, like I said, like an X, where a lot of the major advertisers are kind of, oh, I don't know how to think about Elon Musk or whatever. Well, honey, there's still like hundreds of millions of people on that platform. They've done so much to make sure it's like real people and not bots. And so it's like a bunch of eyeballs that are like looking for ads. Same thing is true on like a Reddit. So Facebook, TikTok, those guys are the behemoths, and that's where everybody's going. But there's some smaller networks, you know, whether it's Reddit is a good one if you're B2B, or like I said, X, but there's also video plays, whether it's, you know, Rumble, depending on your audience, you know, it might be, you know, maybe you're thinking about doing a podcast or a live stream or something, Twitch or Kick. And I know, don't grab your pearls, people, but you know, there's also Truth Social, right? New social network, billions of dollars in value, millions and millions of users. And certainly if you're keen on, you know, that constituency, that could be a place where you might want to present your brand. Not so much that you want to align with, you know, the owners or what have you, but think of it as it's a network. If you're neutral, and it's a network, then you really would want to do like what Jess said, right? Be as many places as you can and, you know, have a really consistent message. So, girlfriend, pivot. What do you think?
Yeah, I think in addition to the referral platforms, which is great, really focus on the organic growth strategies. You know, it's costing more money right now to invest in paid social. There are companies like Outfront and Clear Channel, which are billboards
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
buses and public transportation that will work with you during this time, actually. Um, the space is a little bit more limited, but the cost is still reasonable. But I really recommend focusing on those organic growth strategies. Look at your content. Is it optimized? Look at your SEO on your website. Take this as an opportunity to really look at that content. Is it enough for Google? Do you need to refresh it? What does your SEO strategy look like? You don't need to hire an agency. Usually on the back end of your website, you have an SEO program that's plugged in there and it can kind of guide you along the way. Pop in there, spend 15 minutes a day. It will help. Blogs. Blogs are huge. If you have a section on your website for blogs, start getting in there. It's the best thing for social media. It's the best thing for SEO strategy. It keeps the website fresh. It gives you a reason to kind of say something on social media, and explore going live if you're comfortable, right?
So
Because
good.
on platforms like LinkedIn or Instagram, you know, everybody in your network will get a notification that you're going live.
Yes.
So even if it's
Mm-hmm.
just 3 minutes, you know, anything, just small tips or something that's relevant for your audience, really do a deep dive into your audience segment. And I always advise people, take off your shoes, whatever position you're in, take off your shoes and step into the shoes of your key target demographic. Completely forget what you think they need, but step into your shoes and really try to embody who they are and what they need. Really think about that. So before you go live or you put together some of your ad campaigns, really think about what do they need from you and then build around that. Strategic partnerships are already touched on, maybe some podcasts, but all of these things are organic growth strategies that you can work on in the interim while you're pivoting or pausing just to kind of see what the industry is doing and kind of people's comfort levels. It's just very industry specific focused. Stay focused on that and you'll be okay. The other thing is what I find interesting is with these polls is the highest percentage is email marketing, which is good, except we all get inundated, right? And we don't necessarily read it. It's important, but it's not the only thing that you should focus on. So what I do
Couldn't agree more.
recommend is looking at your overall monthly budget or annual budget. Find a way to pinpoint where your target demographic is. Are they driving in the car? Is it the average consumer? Are they mainly in the office? You know, what is that? And target every single communications avenue that they might see or hear and try to get just a tiny little piece of that. You don't have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in, a lot of billboards or, being on the side of a bus or whatever. But really find a way to make your target demographic the center, and you build your campaign around that. So I, kind of went off a little bit
Okay.
from that, but I found that very
Strategy.
interesting when I saw that people were investing most or depending most on
Mm-hmm.
email marketing. And I'm just
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
curious, is that working for you?
Mm-hmm.
I personally would like to know, because that's not, I do absolutely include it in part of the Marcom strategy, marketing communication strategy, but
Mm-hmm.
certainly is not the highest spend. So I'm curious if that works for
Yeah.
you guys.
Hey,
Yeah.
ladies, I'm
Oh,
just giving a little
hi.
time check.
Oh, thank you, Ella.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, I just want to say one little thing about email, and then we're going to go to the poll. So, yes, I hear you. And, we do a ton of email. It does work and it's cheaper, right? That's why a lot of small businesses, especially B2B, do email because it's like, you buy your database or you acquire it from your customers and stuff. And then, it doesn't cost much to send, but it's just getting hard. It's getting harder. And then if you're trying to do like what you're saying, build a bigger brand with people you don't know or you don't know well, then you got to have some, that's where you got to have the spice and the magic. And, and, it really helps to work with, platforms, professionals that really can help you go big on email. But for dollar, honestly, email is by far the best cost, investment, dollar for dollar in terms of conversions, not for impressions. If you're trying to brand, then you're just not going to get the open rate. Even if you had the best open rate in the industry, which would be excess of 35%, it's still just like a piece,
Yeah.
I right? And for what you'd spend, you'd get millions of views on a Facebook or something, so you just won't get the same brand lift. So like you said, together, they go together. It's like amazing. All right, so let's shift. We talked about, we answered the question partially. How would this presidential election impact your fourth quarter marketing plan? Which is, if I'm going to recap, it's going to, likely result in higher ad costs, especially in the common places like paid media, paid social. It's going to make your audience probably less likely to be receptive to your messages that have been working because they're being inundated with a lot of messages that they're not keen on, whether it's, political topics or uncertainty or fear mongering or whatever it is. And so even though your message is none of those things, it's going to fall into a fatigued, noisy environment. So your potential customers might not be able to hear you or hear what you're saying. And so, in Jessica's perspective, this might be a great time to reflect, possibly pause, possibly pivot. But this is a great time to reflect and have a look at your mix. And I can see that almost everybody who's joining us today is doing that. Maybe we presented you with some additional perspective of things that you might change in your mix that you might not have had considered. Um, Here's another thing that I would say is, this is a great time to think about for those people you have met. Maybe they came through your inside sales channel or they converted on email or what have you. This is a great time to invest in your pipeline, right? Progression. So, last year we sent out cookies. We found one of our clients is a very small bakery here, in where my ranch is and Globe, and we helped her build a website. And so every year, 2, 3 times a year, I buy custom designed royalized cookies from her with my logo or something like that, and I send them to prospects and clients. You guys might get some. Somebody, yeah. So give up your diet and get that cookie. They're really good. And but those cookies, they led to a ton of clients. I won't say a ton, but they left an impression on lots of our prospects, and almost every single client that I sent them to about 25, clients, and every single one was, oh my God, the cookie was so cute, so, and it cost us like $5. I'm not kidding you. It cost the cookie was like $3 or $4, and then the postage, and maybe it cost like $7 if I really was really honest about all the costs. So like that small investment, to on a lead that you've already met is worth it every time. So it's like invest more in the people you've met, and spend this time while you're reflecting and possibly pivoting or pausing to build the relationships that you've already started. So that would be a really great thing. Because here's what we didn't talk about, girlfriend, before we go to the poll, is after the beginning of November and this election is happened, ad spend is going to go like this, whoop, and the cost per click is going to fall off of a cliff. And it's going to be great. So save all your dollars, right? Because you're going to slide into, really affordable clicks. Now that's going to be a little bit short-lived because then it's like the end of the year and the retailers are going to go big, 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 unless of course something really horrible happens, which we all, pray or hope and wish or whatever it is that you do that doesn't happen. So if it's just no, business as usual, then you'll go into the retail cycle, and then again at the start of the year you're going to get a big drop, and then you have really efficient, really low cost per clicks, low cost CPMs, everything will be lower. And so again, back to what Jessica was suggesting, great time to reflect on your strategy, think about your budget, and like maybe even save your pennies for some new tactics, but definitely your core tactics, you'll get more yield. It might even be worthwhile for you to save your money. And then as those ad costs go down, after these cycles are over, then you actually get more yield and you get a bang for your buck and it give you time to reflect. So, the first part of this is, how will it affect your marketing plan? But, as I think I hope we all agree, is that marketing is more than just ads, right? It's communicating. That's really what marketing is. It's part of how you start and build relationships. And so it's communicating. So these 4 questions are about how does political topics fit into your communication. So the first one is just a temperature test. So please take this time. I'm gonna chit chat while y'all are taking this survey, okay? So the first one is about how would you characterize the climate? And that's so we can level set, because some folks might be like, oh, this climate is horrible. And other people might be like, it's just fine. I don't notice a difference, right? So we want to get an idea of the temperature. The second question is we want to understand what's your approach. Some people, like my husband, for example, he loves to have political conversations. Me, on the other hand, I don't. I find them to be in the same category of like your personal medical type of scenarios. It's like I don't really want to know about all your intimate personal medical type of situations, and I also don't really need to know about your political views. Now, that's not to say I shut people down. I don't. I want people to be open with me, and I'm the same, but I find those things, in my opinion, this is just my personal opinion, to be private information. So I'd love, on question 2, to know what your approach is, because there's no such thing as a wrong approach. It's different, right? Everyone's different. So political conversations at work. So Jess, I know. So the first one is, Jess, how would you characterize the political climate right now?
Yeah, I agree with the majority of people who answered the poll. I would say it's contentious, it's somewhat negative,
Yeah.
very divided.
Yes.
Um, doesn't necessarily feel like a safe place.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I couldn't have said that any better. It doesn't feel safe, right? It doesn't feel like people feel uncomfortable when you bring up a lot of political topics, even the economy, right? There's like, it is inflation, there isn't inflation, it is better, it isn't better, right? And then it seems like a moment where you could argue. So, okay, so Jess, how do you go about having political conversations while you're in work, kind of a setting, especially as a award-winning marketer? So what's your approach?
I don't. If somebody feels that they need to be heard, I am more than happy to listen. It's important that, any client feels like you're listening to them and you're not shutting them off. But the conversation ends there. They don't really need to know my political stance or, or that of the company. And we don't have one really. We're just, marketing.
Neutral, correct.
Yeah. So, but I do want to make sure that people do feel heard and that, if they need to say something, that I am a safe place or that Imaginary is a safe place for them.
That's perfect. I couldn't agree with you more, and I couldn't have said it any better either. I completely agree with you. As I said earlier, I choose not to have political conversations, but the way you said it, absolutely, you want your clients to be heard. So if topics like that come up, of course, I would advise all my clients to listen and hear because it'll give you perspective on who your clients are, right? And your future clients. But in terms of what we've seen over the last couple of years, where companies like, oh, it's certain types of lives matter and certain types of lives do or don't, and vote this color or that color, or whatever. Those sorts of things I think are absolutely okay for you as a person because you're free and your opinions as a person really matter. But a business, I would advise my clients, is not a person, and businesses don't vote and businesses don't belong in politics. That's my advisory to my clients, especially for B2B. Consumer brands may want to align themselves on certain topics because that aligns with their offering or their solution or service or their product. They might be find it appropriate to have a position because it reflects a lifestyle that aligns with their offering. But for business brands, I would always advise to be open, right? So you want to do business with everyone, regardless of their political positions, except for maybe anarchists, right? I think we can all agree that those people who want to blow up the world, you might want to avoid those. But everyone else, everyone else is, as a business, you welcome them. That would be
Right.
my advisory.
I would say, though, if you are a business that does
Mhm.
require a stance, or you can leverage one side or the other to promote your
Yes.
business,
Hmm.
I highly recommend, and we're kind of jumping ahead because I know that this is one of the poll questions. Do
Yeah.
you have a crisis plan or a plan in place in
Yes.
case it goes south? The advantage to the crisis plan, if you don't have it, it forces you to kind of work through what could go wrong. And it
Hmm.
helps you to identify things that you might not have thought about before. So if you are a business that is discerning, stepping into the
Hmm.
space and having a stance, then
Yeah.
I highly recommend doing that. One, so that you can explore everything that could potentially, I don't want to say it could go wrong, but you can
Hmm.
explore every single facet of taking that stance. And
Yeah.
also, respectively, how you could best handle it if it's not necessarily received the way that you intended it to be received.
Such great advice. Absolutely. So let's go further, right? So Jessica pointed out something really great. So some brands do pick a side on a variety of different issues, environment or climate or different things, because for that business, for those executives, for the business owner, they feel that that aligns really well with their company values, their offering, how they want to be seen in the market. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But I couldn't agree with Jessica more. It is something that just like everything in your marketing strategy should be well thought out, right? You're mindful, you're demure, right? You're really mindful of what you're doing in that strategy, and you're prepared for those conversations because there may be perspectives that aren't aligned with you or that might even push back on your perspectives. And so you're prepped for a healthy, constructive conversation in the market that'll be very public. So that takes me to my case study. So, like I said, I won't say names. It was a small coffee shop. It's still in business. Okay, so they didn't go out of business or anything. They really were growing very fast. People loved them. They went from a single location to being franchised in 13 different states. But here's what happened. And so that takes to the next part because most of you probably haven't decided to pick a side and you're like, no, duh, I don't talk politics at work. That's not what we do. But here's the last point that we're gonna discuss in this conversation, and then we will thank you so much for your time and look forward to seeing you next month. So sometimes these conversations come up unexpectedly. And though you, as a seasoned professional, may know how to navigate through that, your staff, especially lower level staff, may not. They may not be prepared. And both Jessica and I, we work with really large companies, and they have crisis plans, or they have messaging plans, or different kinds of plans around communications. They have training. One of my huge clients, I mean, they literally have like Borg style training that their employees have to go through like on a monthly basis for this particular, not just this topic, but related. Because, when you've got a brand worth billions and billions of dollars, you want to make sure that every employee, especially when you have loads of employees, are good stewards of that brand. But the same is true even if you have a tiny little company and you only have two other employees. They also are stewards of your brand. And so here's what happens to that coffee shop. So business doesn't take a stand politically, but I guess some pollsters or surveyors, people doing a survey, sent a survey via email, that dastardly thing, sent a survey to employees at the company at this little location, and they responded to the survey. I think what they said. Now I'm gonna bring up a political topic. The survey was about, I want to say. Uh, Abortion, or I know that some people find that to be an unsavory word. So it was about, you know, um, things related to terminating a pregnancy, right? And so the response that they gave was, we're not going to participate in your survey. No, thank you, because we're pro-life or something of that nature. So I injected a political position in response to something without intending to communicate a political message, right? So the entity, it was a nonprofit that was conducting the survey, took that, put it on social media, and was like, "Oh my gosh, boycott this coffee shop because they're anti-woman, they're anti-woman's health, they're, all these things." So this little coffee shop, who's on this great, exciting growth path, got caught up in cancel culture because of a employee who inadvertently was like, "No, I don't want to participate in this survey," and, you know, made a comment. So you're thinking, "Oh my gosh," right? So like Jessica said, take them shoes off and put your feet into the shoes of, your potential clients, or actually in this case, your potential staff. And so the question would be is, in addition to your response plan, do you have an employee handbook? Now, some of you might be bigger companies, and yes, of course, we have an employee handbook. But what I find is the smaller the company that I work with, the less likely they are to have documentation, like handbooks for employees, legal positions, crisis plans, response plans. The less likely they're to have those things, not because the business owners aren't skilled or knowledgeable. It's just, we're all so busy, and you just don't have the time or the resources. The bigger the company, the more dedicated staff they have to do those things. So that's really where having a company policy about political conversations is so important, and why I wanted to be sure that we talked about it, because it's not just about ads, and it's beyond your organic strategy or your messaging or anything. It's actually really beyond that. It's really about having a solid policy basis for your company. And it doesn't even have to be formal. It could be an email that you write to staff. Today, you guys, if you don't have this, put some notes down about what's your, not political position, but your company's policy about political conversations. Whatever you think is right for you guys. For at Change 3, we ask our employees to never represent political positions when they're representing our brand, regardless of what they've heard or discussed, or, it is not appropriate for us at Change 3 to take a position. So in that case, what would that employee could have done differently? No, thank you. We don't want to participate in your survey. You don't have to make any other, and then no cancel, right? So Jess, what do you think about that case study?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because, and I think, this is kind of what happens is that people just kind of say something not thinking about the aftermath, or I hate to say consequences, but if you have to be really careful with your business. And so it's really important that employees understand why.
Hmm.
Why do they need to be careful with their words and what they choose to respond to? And so that's where I highly recommend putting together that crisis response plan, because it really does. And you can find templates super easy. I know everybody's busy, but if you just pull up a template, it can kind of guide you through some things,
That's a
and it
good
helps
point.
you to
Yeah.
think about, oh, I never had that conversation, with my
Hmm.
team. I think we need to have that, because a lot of times we just assume that other people know they shouldn't be talking about that, but they have different points of view, and sometimes they're thinking about other things. And unless that is a very firm, well, not a firm conversation, but unless it's
Clear.
you know, a strong conversation, they might not even think about it. So I highly recommend, doing that first step and then having some conversations with your team.